I want to show you an online conversation I started the other day with some online friends, some MAGA supporters and non MAGA supporters alike. All claim to be Christians, all claim to be conservative. This conversation really, of one of my friends is so good at pointing out the contradictions in what MAGA people claim. And he did such a good job on this. I wanted to share it with you. I had started the conversation by saying that every day since this administration has come into office has been an unmitigated disaster, which I believe to be true. And if you don't believe that yet, I think someday in the next year or so, it'll be patently evident to everyone. So I posted that. A MAGA person came on and said, "Oh, no, no, it hasn't been an unmitigated disaster. What are you talking about? That's so bad that you would say that." So a friend of mine, KA, starts off and says, corrupt, lawless, and authoritarian, terrorizing hardworking immigrants, talking about the president, terrorizing hardworking immigrants who have never committed a crime since arriving here and who have contributed much to our society and to our country with hard work, paid taxes, and they've raised families. They've even arrested U.S. citizens and opened internment camps. Then she goes on, that's the only thing she said about immigrants. Then the rest of it is about other subjects. Kicking 17 million off of health insurance, dismantling every single agency so government is positively broken. He's destroying the country. He's done everything in an authoritarian regime playbook except arrest dissidents and political enemies and stop elections, but give him time. It's only been 7 months and we haven't gotten to an election yet. So just wait, just wait. Um, then PJ, our resident MAGA supporter, who never backs down, he always claims, "I don't like Trump. Trump's, I don't care about him. He's not my thing. He's not my cup of tea." But he always defends him to the hilt and everything, that comes out of the administration. So he writes back. He picks up on just one thing, the immigrants. That's it. That's all. I mean, they're just so obsessed with this immigrant thing. And he says they most certainly are criminals. They're in this country illegally. Being in the country illegally is against the law. Okay. Now, FM writes back. He says, you are attempting to use the term criminals as a legal definition. Of, sorry, I messed that up really bad. It's not a statement, it's a question. He asks, he asks, he asked PJ, are you attempting to use the term criminals as a legal definition or as a means to dehumanize an entire group of people to make it easier to look the other way when they're being treated unfairly? Boy, talk about cut to the heart of the matter, right? That's really the heart of the matter. So obvious, so obvious. They never say it. They'll never say it, of course. This is all smokescreen. It's all smokescreen, all this, oh, they're criminals, so now we can do whatever we want. It's just a way to dehumanize them so you can use them as the excuse to do whatever authoritarian or police state type tactic you want to engage in. Then he says, because being an undocumented immigrant is not a felony offense under U.S. law. It's a misdemeanor. Well, it's not necessarily a misdemeanor either. It depends. I'll tell you in a minute. That someone with an actual criminal felony conviction can still become president of the United States, while someone with a misdemeanor is sent to Alligator Alcatraz. I would also like to ask FM, since by law crossing the border illegally is a crime, but it's a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. Okay. Uh, Overstaying a visa. If you come in legally, but you overstay a visa, guess what? That's not a crime at all. That's a civil violation of law. Nothing to do with the criminal act. It's not criminal at all. And a lot of the people who were here that are now undocumented came in that way. So that they haven't committed any crime at all. But I don't think ICE is making that distinction when they go and do their mass roundups in the cities, making a big show of how strong and powerful they are. Now, here's what's a crime, and it gets more serious here. If you've been deported and you come back in without authorization, that's a felony. And that's a serious crime. Okay. Um, entering entering illegally is a misdemeanor, but then immediately applying for asylum is protected under asylum law. So you're technically not here illegally if you've applied for asylum. Now, if it turns out there's no merit to your claim, then that's a different thing. They will say, okay, we've adjudicated your case and we've ruled that you do not merit uh, winning asylum. So you got to go back. That's fine. Let it be that way. That's the way it should be. But really, how can they go on and on like this? They committed a crime, so they should go to Alligator Alcatraz or CCOT, you know, go to basically a concentration camp in El Salvador for a misdemeanor. Really? Really? Uh, so so PJ's a little older. No, sorry, FM. I get these things mixed up because I'm using initials here. FM's a little older. No, PJ's a little older. Okay. He has children and grandchildren. Now imagine one of his grandchildren gets a speeding ticket. I think I don't know, what is that, a misdemeanor? It's not just a civil violation, right? I know ICE has arrested some people and said they had a crime in their record, in their background, because they had a speeding ticket 20 years ago. So let's count that as a crime. Let's call it a misdemeanor. Would PJ think that his grandson or granddaughter should be sent to life in prison for going 15 miles an hour over the speed limit? I don't believe he would think that. But if you are called an immigrant and you're from a different country, then he believes that should happen to you. See, it doesn't make any sense. It makes no sense. Well, PJ responds by saying, I'm not trying to dehumanize anyone. I'm trying to describe them accurately. Sure, sure. It's all good, right? It's all good intentions. Everything's peaceful here. He says watch how he gets angrier. He goes from, I'm not trying to dehumanize anyone, to, they are breaking the law. What else would you call someone who breaks the law? Well, there are different categories of law, right? There's serious felonies, there's different classes of felonies, there's misdemeanors. So, yeah, you first of all, you have to figure out which category of law that they fall into based on what each individual one of them has done. But yeah, no, to him, they're all the same. It's literally like FM was saying that he's just trying to lump them all into one big category called criminals and make out like they are super violent criminals and use that as a justification for treating them in horrendous ways, in really horrendous ways. So he says they are not being untreated unfairly at all. They are being treated entirely fairly. They have no right to be in this country in the first place, so they are entitled to nothing. Actually, that's not true. By the Constitution, these people all say they love the Constitution and they want the government to follow the Constitution. You have a constitutional right. If you are on U.S. soil, you have a constitutional right to due process. You have constitutional rights to all kinds of protections. The government can't just come in and say, shoot you in the head because you're on U.S. soil, but you're not a U.S. citizen. They can't do that, right? Everybody agrees with that. Well, they also can't just throw you in jail without a hearing and without due process. They can't do that either. It's in the Constitution. Absolutely, it's in the Constitution. He says, and here's something we hear all the time now, Donald Trump was democratically elected by the American people. I agree with that. I don't dispute the election. That's why he's president. You don't have to like it, but it's an established fact, regardless of whether or not it hurts your feelings. The gratuitous personal insult, of course. They're being sent to Alligator Alcatraz because they are in this country illegally. So he's doing exactly what FM said he was doing, and then he denied he was doing. It's called gaslighting. And he said, I'm not doing this, and then he does it. I'm not being unfair. I'm not being mean, but they're being sent there because they're being sent to Alligator Alcatraz because they've committed a misdemeanor. And a lot of the people being sent there, some of them have committed some serious crimes, but a lot of them, and the majority of them, haven't committed any felonies at all. But our president has, and he's in the White House, and that's okay. That's all well and good. So FM writes back his final comment. This is really good. He says, PJ, you are you are not at all trying to describe undocumented immigrants correctly. People who are in the US illegally have committed civil offenses or misdemeanors, not serious felony criminal violations. That's true. US law does not define them as felons. You do, because criminals, and he's talking about, he's basically talking, acting like they're all felons, like they're serious criminals, because criminals are less human. So you treat them as felons because felons are less human. Because criminals and felons do not deserve your mercy and compassion. The current US president had promised mass deportations to rid American society of criminals, hardened criminals. He talked about it. He said murderers and rapists and child traffickers. That's what he would say when he described them during the campaign. That's what he continues to say today. Yet over 70% of those being arrested and deported, and often under inhumane circumstances, have no criminal records at all, not even a misdemeanor. That's right. Their only offense is residing in the US without documentation while having spent decades serving American society and paying taxes. Tell me, why is it that the IRS issues special individual taxpayer identification numbers to people without legal immigration status so they can comply with tax laws and pay income tax? Why? Why do they do that? If they're such hardened criminals, they shouldn't get that, right? Because for decades, they've been considered part of the American workforce fulfilling essential services. That's right. And we're going to see, give it a few more months, we're going to see just how essential some of these services are. Going to see higher prices, shortages, all kinds of things are going to start happening. Okay, now FM says, now as the political winds shift, they're suddenly criminals entitled to nothing, not even due process, not even the rights that they are entitled to. After having paid billions of dollars in taxes to the US government every year, they're not even entitled to human dignity, human rights, and due process? Not even to some Christian mercy? No, just feed them to the alligators, as Laura Loomer is calling for. And then the clincher, FM says, and please explain to me this paradox of why those, including yourself, who are calling the loudest and with the least compassion for these criminals to be deported, at the same time passionately support someone convicted of an actual criminal offense to leave their country. Why? To leave their country and make it great again without noticing the contradiction. What is it you really want? A crime-free society or a Latino-free society with white criminals only? Yeah, I guess he thinks white makes right. White criminals are right. They're okay. Right? I mean, seriously. I was a conservative all my life and a Republican up until sometime a year or two after Trump's first term started. I didn't vote for him the first time around, though. Couldn't do that. But I wasn't sure where the movement was going until maybe a couple of years into it. And it started to become really clear that no, this isn't an aberration. This is something the majority of the Republican Party supports. Then I know I couldn't be a Republican anymore. But all that time, I never heard anyone in my circles overtly say anything against minorities on account of there being a minority. They, as far as my impression goes, for the most part, they treated minorities of all ethnic backgrounds, whatever their background was, African American or Asian or Hispanic or whatever. If the person agreed with them ideologically, then they loved them, and if they didn't, then they didn't like them. And it was my impression all that time that the main thing they held against minorities was the fact that a majority of them were Democrats, which seemed understandable at the time. But now, honestly, I'm not so sure. Now we have Hispanics voting for Trump more than they voted for any Republican in the past. You would think they would be embracing Hispanics and saying, wait, 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 don't go anywhere, stay. We want you all to stay. But they're not saying that. I don't know why not. Honestly, I really don't know. A lot of people on the liberal side and Democrats say it's racism and that they're just racist. Well, guess what? I'm open to that suggestion now. I wasn't in the past, but I'm open to that now because maybe that is what it is. Because there does seem to be a really deep-seated hatred towards people who, for the most part, the vast majority of whom haven't done anything wrong. They've done nothing bad to our society. Some of them have, of course, just like some of us have. But I don't see how it warrants sending somebody who's committed the equivalent of a misdemeanor, a traffic ticket, to jail for the rest of their lives, to a horrible jail, one that's like a concentration camp where you're tortured. How can any Christian support that? And that's kind of the whole point here, as the channel name, Unholy Alliances, suggests. Why are Christians forming this unholy alliance with politicians and political leaders for the sake of political power when so much of what they're doing ask us to compromise our Christian beliefs? And why are so many Christians compromising those beliefs? It's not good stuff. It's really not good. And Christians, if you believe you're a Christian, you need to think about this stuff. You have to at least be honest. You have to at least treat all people the same. If a misdemeanor shouldn't send your own son or daughter to a concentration camp for the rest of their lives, then it shouldn't send an immigrant to a concentration camp for the rest of their lives either, right? And if you're so against crime and so harsh and so unforgiving of criminals, why are you so forgiving of the criminal? And I mean, it's a legal, technical thing that I'm saying, calling him a criminal. It's not a gratuitous insult. It's the fact of the law. He is a criminal, a convicted felon in the White House. Why are you okay with that? But you're not okay with people who've committed very minor crimes and misdemeanors, and some of whom haven't committed any crime at all. But because they're foreign, they speak Spanish, and maybe they have a thick Spanish accent when they speak English, and you don't like that, and you want them all to go back and literally treat them like rocks, no better than you'd treat a rock. Think about it. Just think about it. That's all I'm asking. Okay. Hey, thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And I will see you next time.